Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live, brought to you by NordVPN. My name is Daniel Coe. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports Keith Jackson. Keith, are you well?
Yeah, I'm roasting. This wee sweat box of a studios, they've cranked up to 11 today, so I'm also very excited. I'm getting excited because I can hear you two before we started the show talking about the World Cup, and you're all getting all excited and all this. It's like two wee kids in a sweetie store. It's months away, boys.
Yeah.
It's something like 90 days or something, 80 days? That'll fly in.
It's less than that.
We'll fly in.
How are you, Scott? How's it going?
I'm good, Daniel. I was off last week, so delighted to be back, as you can imagine. But now we're ready to go again. And by the way, it will fly in because with this title race, Scottish Cup, Scotland game, bang, the World Cup will be upon us before you know it. It's exciting.
No time at all. You mentioned the title race, and it's obviously been dominating the show all season, I guess. Scott Brown, Keith, has a 3-point plan to get Celtic back into the title race and save their season. What more can you tell us?
Well, I did an interview with Scott, and on covering a whole range of matters. There'll be a more in-depth piece, certainly about Callum McGregor in tomorrow's paper. There's a piece that's just gone out online just now, an exclusive. Scott Brownie mentioning 3 things he feels has to happen if Celtic are to get over the line here and salvage the season, basically. First one's first is people need to realise and give Callum McGregor the credit he's due for being prepared, even if he is carrying an injury, being prepared to make himself available, being prepared to get out there and play when there are a few other guys around Lennoxtown that haven't just been as highly visible or accessible when it's come down to who's putting their hand up for a game at the weekend. And Scott Brown's a massive admirer, obviously, Callum McGregor. Two of them, played together in the midfield for a period of years before the armband was passed between the two. And I think, much of it in tomorrow's article is about that relationship and just why people should realise what they've got with Callum McGregor. So it's kind of get off his back would be plank number 1 of the 3-point plan. Plank number 2 is sit down with Martin O'Neill and ask him the question, would he be prepared to sign another contract and stay on for next year? And plank number 3 is whatever the bad blood is between the fans and between the board, and I know that there's sort of a temporary truce being called, Scott believes the only way of making this a memorable end to the season and giving Martin O'Neill the send-off that he's deserving of is for a complete and utter, and using the word ceasefire, I know that's probably not the right phrase at this time in the way things are in the world, but yeah, just it needs to be unified and everybody needs to be singing for the same hymn sheet. And if they're supporting Callum McGregor, if they're supporting Martin O'Neill, Scott Brown feels there's still a chance. He also says, by the way, that of all the recent titles, and he was involved in plenty of them during his 10 and a half, 11 years at the club, this one would be, for all the reasons around it, this one would be the best of the lot, he reckons.
Wow.
So yeah, I'll add quite a lot to take in. As the story's up online just now, but it is, essentially that's it. Scott Brown's 3-point plan is salvage Celtic season.
I mean, as you say, the story's up now and it's definitely worth checking out. Let me read a couple of the quotes to get your take on it, Scott, because, me and Keith talked about Callum McGregor last night. Scott Brown says, I'm telling you now, never write Cal off because he's the main man and he keeps that club ticking. His mentality is next to none. He wants to play every game, whether he's injured or not. He'll fight for the cause, for the good of the football club, rather than worrying about what's best for himself. We were saying last night in the show, Scott, I don't really... Okay, he's maybe not been at his scintillating best every game this season, but it would be madness to think about taking Callum McGregor at the Celtic team.
The McGregor thing fascinates me. I mean, I don't see Celtic every week, but looking in from the outside, of all the problems that Celtic's got, surely Callum McGregor's the least of your worries. When you look at that squad, even things off the pitch, everything that surrounds the club, Callum McGregor is the one thing you don't need to worry about. And I mean, he's 32 years old, but we're talking about a guy here that's 36, 37, and you're worried that his legs are gone. I mean, 32 is nothing, in this day and age. And if Callum McGregor's form's dipped, and I listen to Celtic fans and see comments, and that seems to be the general view that he's not been as good and he's been off it. I would put that down to what's round about him, and that's because it's only a year, 18 months to 2 years you're watching Callum McGregor at the highest level in Champions League games compete with the very best. And Celtic were strong at that time. They had a really good kind of midfield around him. I think of some of those European nights when he's got Hatate and Engels beside him, and they're on form. Even going back to when it was Matt O'Reilly, even going back further when it was a Scott Brown or whatever. I mean, top level performances against top level teams. He is not the issue at Celtic in terms of their current form or the state they're in this title race. And as Jacko touched on, I think he's suffering because I think others round about him have really struggled to step up to the plate. And I actually feel sorry for him in that sense, because he'd never admit it publicly. But you think of the teams that Callum McGregor's been involved in, he must look around that dressing room at the moment at the quality around him. And I'm talking about guys that we've discussed on here before, like your Balaquishas and Adamus and Fancharas and people like that. Just not the level I don't think that Callum McGregor's been used to at Celtic, and I can only assume that his game is suffering as a result of that. I mean, he can't carry that team on his own. You think even somebody like Maeda, who's been nowhere near his best this season, and where he's been in terms of his performances in recent years. So I just don't get the criticism of Callum McGregor. I mean, can you imagine he wasn't there? Where they'd be in terms of the league and the title race? So
I think Scott as well.
Right.
I think as well the fact he's clearly carrying injury, but he's prepared to go back into it. But he knows what's on the line here. Mm-hmm. And we were discussing last night, if Callum McGregor thought he wasn't fit enough to give Martin O'Neill a good 60, 70 minutes, he's professional enough. He's the immaculate professional. He wouldn't put himself in that position. He is clearly, Martin O'Neill clearly wants him to go out on the pitch and empty the tank for him to try and help win games. And as Scott Brown says, Callum McGregor's not a selfish guy. He will put the club first, and he's prepared to put himself at risk of further injury in order to try and keep this thing on track. I'm just surprised there's a debate about it. And I know there was stuff circling about in social media, and it was one clip from the game at the weekend where he gets the ball and he's going over the halfway line, and there is a forward pass on, and he turns back and keeps possession and gives it to the fullback rather than take the forward pass. And people are using that as a sort of club to beat him over the head with. Callum McGregor's entire Celtic career has been spent on keeping the ball, possession-based game, not making, not giving the ball away with rash passes, choosing the right pass at the right time if he's going forward. That's what his game's all about. There's nothing changed here. Other than the fact that Martin O'Neill's revealed that he is carrying a bit of an injury. But I say good on him, because there are too many players that have gone missing this season for Celtic. That might sound a bit harsh, because I know that there have been some really bad injury issues. But I look at some of the guys, I look at some of the things that have happened around the club this year, and you wonder, how come? What is going on with the medical department? What's going on with these guys? Why have they been missing in action for so long? And then you've got a guy who has always seen himself as, a guy that leads from the front. He's prepared to put his body in a line. Maybe he's expecting that one or two of his teammates may have been, equally prepared to go that extra mile. And that's certainly the thrust of the conversation with Scott Brown, and plus a bit more in tomorrow's paper, yeah.
What's fascinating, Jacko, is what do you think happens at the end of the season? I know I'm jumping ahead into the future. We've got a title race to go. But in terms of Callum McGregor at the end of the season, we've spoken on here about, I've talked on here about the massive revamp Celtic are going to have. Surely any new manager coming in, whether it's Martin O'Neill or somebody fresh coming in, I think when you've got that size of rebuild, you need people there that know
continuity. You absolutely need it. Yeah.
What if somebody there? And yet I keep hearing people saying, "No, his time's up." No, is there going to be
It's a nonsense.
is there going to be
Funnily enough,
Rodgers to go to Saudi? Is he going to get something like that going to come up that might tempt him away? Does Callum McGregor need to look at the club and think, well, where are we going here? Who is the next manager? Will there be further investment? It's going to be fascinating.
Possibly, Scott, but given the way he feels about the club, I think he'll need to get dragged out of the place by wild horses. I think that he's all in. And I also think that's part of the reason that I wanted to speak to Scott Brown about it, because there are so many similarities. When Brendan Rodgers came into Celtic, at that time Scott Brown was captain and people were writing him off. He was finished. He was only in his early 30s at that point. But that was the chat among Celtic supporters. Well, need a new captain. Bruni's legs have gone. That was all you heard at the time. And he had come back from a really bad injury under Ronnie Dyler, hadn't he? But look where his career went at that point in his career.
He played the best football of his career from then on.
It went stratospheric from that point. So are you honestly prepared to look at Callum McGregor and write that off just now? That sounds like madness to me. There is another interesting point in all of this, as you're just saying. What is the future for the manager? And Scott Brown is of the opinion that he says, I think the exact quote was that
well, I've got it.
He's not a spring chicken anymore, Martin O'Neill. But if Celtic could talk him into signing for another year, he thinks that would be a really positive move for the club. I'm not so sure about that, I have to be honest, and I've voiced my concerns about that. I just think if Celtic are serious and want to be seen as being serious, they have to have a much bigger, more defined plan for what the future looks like than asking a 74-year-old guy to stay on till he's 75. That for me isn't an answer at all. It could well be there's an alternative role for Martin O'Neill. Maybe he's looking at the chairman's situation, because that's only filled on an interim basis. Maybe that might be an elegant solution to the whole thing, but I just don't think it's feasible to say to Martin O'Neill at the age of 74, right, can you go again next season? What does that tell you about future planning? No. I don't think it looks good, and I think given the mess that the Celtic board have made of everything over the last 18 months, then it's probably about time that they started laying down some foundations that the supporters could connect with and think, oh yeah, right, I see the way forward. The way forward can't be a 74-year-old guy staying in the dugout until he's 75. That can't be it.
See whether or not it's right. Do you guys think he would stay on if he was asked?
I don't think so, Dan. Just listening to Martin O'Neill, even in recent weeks, he's been talking about the new manager coming in and the new guy coming in. I don't think he's thinking for a second he'll be Celtic manager next season. And I totally agree with Jacko. I mean, that cannot, with all due respect to Martin O'Neill, a legendary manager, what a job he's done in both of these spells coming back as interim. But is that really where Celtic are going now? Is that the future? Is that the plan for the next few years? Let's try and get Martin O'Neill for another year. We'll try and squeeze another title bid. I don't see it. And listen, see after the weekend result, even beating St Mirren, you were even starting to hear kind of murmurs of criticism towards Martin O'Neill for Celtic fans. It wasn't great to watch. It was a bit boring. Didn't kick on the second half. St Mirren loads of possession. So there's even wee bits of criticism coming for him. Even Martin O'Neill's getting a wee bit of flack now. Can you imagine if they did persuade him to stay on next season and it doesn't start well? I mean, it could begin to unravel for him, and you wouldn't like to see. No, you wouldn't like to see that kind of iconic figure at the club, ending on a real sour note. So I'd be amazed if Martin O'Neill's in charge of Celtic next season. I mean, that just can't happen.
I tell you what makes that even a more difficult scenario, Scott, is that if you're looking at the way Celtic have conducted their business over the previous transfer windows, and it's not been impressive, And then just the other week, Martin O'Neill was on Easter Monday down at Preston North End, effectively scouting for players.
Right.
So, look, if somebody was to sit Martin O'Neill down and say, look, here's a list of players we're going for. This is serious stuff. We're going top end here. We're going to spend really big. Well, maybe Martin O'Neill might be more inclined to think, do you know what, it gives me a chance. It's a throwback to the days when he had John Hartson, Chris Sutton, Henrik Larsson. Maybe that would be attractive. But the idea of working like this, on this basis, with that recruitment department, and he's now having to oversee that into the bargain, as well as just keep the season alive. No, I don't think any of it makes sense. And I said last week, I wrote a bit saying that Celtic have become effectively short-term FC. That's what they are. They can't continue like that. It can't go on like that indefinitely. I think Celtic supporters can just about put up with it till the end of this season for the only reason that Martin O'Neill's at the helm and he's breaking his back for them to try and keep it on. But I just don't think you can go into the summer and say, right, well, that's it. Well, more the same next season. A shoddy recruitment department, Martin O'Neill having to personally go and look at the players that are coming in because they don't trust the structure behind the scenes. And then, another, who's to say, Celtic have never needed a transfer window as badly as they need this summer one. But if they conduct themselves as poorly as they have done in the recent ones, there's no guarantee that Celtic get any better, that this squad gets stronger. Anything the recent trend suggests that they're downgrading rather than upgrading these positions.
Martin O'Neill, I mean, this isn't a criticism of Martin O'Neill, but no, he is 74. Does he really get the energy to oversee a massive rebuild at Celtic in the summer? No, I think the whole place, the whole dressing room, I think needs revitalised. And listen, I know he's got Sean Maloney and Mark Foley and people up beside him that can do that, but I look at Martin O'Neill and think, well, he's done a brilliant job coming in on a short-term basis, but he must have only ever felt that's what it was going to be. I think if you suddenly present Martin O'Neill and say, listen, when you stay for another year, you need to go and organise pre-season, you need to sort the recruitment department out, we need to sign 12 players because we're losing 8. I mean, does Martin O'Neill really get the energy and the drive and the desire to go and do that? I mean, he's not been short of passion and desire in his career as a manager. If you go back 20 years, of course he'd be up for that challenge. But now, I'd be amazed if he's up for taking that job on.
We've got plenty of comments coming in. You can see them come up on the screen. Haven't even had a chance to read any out yet, so let me throw a few of these at you. Rebel says, today's 74 is yesterday's 54, Scott. Anne says, Martin should run for the house. They both have absolutely zero ambition. Stephen says, Martin O'Neill should not stay on. He was shafted in the January transfer window. If back properly, Celtic would be out of sight by now. Marzuno says, I'd be surprised if he isn't there next season. John says, why would Martin O'Neill stay for next season when the board didn't fully back him? And on Callum McGregor, Jimmy says, I think Callum McGregor's getting run into the ground with the amount of games he plays. Kyle says, I'll say one thing as a St Mirren fan, I'll be delighted if he doesn't play on Sunday at Hampden. Great player and professional. McKenna goes on about how Hearts always mark him because of his threat. And Marzuno again says there's an element that always blames Calmac when we lose. Numpties. And this one actually, James says, can't understand why Celtic fans are moaning. Try watching Carlos Pena for a season, then you'll understand what suffering is. Hope Carlos doesn't watch that one.
Listen, important to note again, at the weekend, and Martin O'Neill has been asked to perform now without a functioning strike force of any note, all across the attack. Maeda, who for so long has been Celtic's best bet, there's some stat I saw earlier on today. It's 14 games since he scored or assisted. So he's actually not contributing.
The stat actually, I think it was this time last year, Maeda was on a run of scoring 13 goals in 16 games. Right now, he's going into his 14th domestic game this weekend without an assist, without a goal.
So he's not contributing. Yeah. And what happened at the weekend? Despite the criticism that's been thrown at Callum McGregor has one shot which forces an awkward save out of the goalkeeper, St Mirren keeper. Oxlade-Chamberlain buries it. He's offside. Less than 10 minutes later, same thing. Callum McGregor gets to the edge of the box, gets a shot off. So what's that? And it's the same again. I think it deflects off Rogic, and Oxlade-Chamberlain tucks it away. Celtic get the winning goal. But that's coming about because Callum McGregor is not only doing his midfield duties, but he's understanding. We've got problems up front. We're not looking at creating or scoring goals. So he's taking that load onto him as well. And on two separate occasions at the start of that game at St Mirren, he's got a shot off that's led to Oxlade-Chamberlain, sticking the rebound in the back of the net. Honestly, I find it bizarre. I find it bizarre it's a debate. I really do.
Sorry, the last comment, guys, that I wanted to throw at you is on Celtic. Let me just find it. It's from Robert. He says, how many players do you think Celtic need in the summer? He reckons at least 8, 2 centre-backs, left-back, 2 right-wingers, 2 strikers. That's what I think. I can't really disagree with Robert. I think it's minimum 8, to be honest.
I would agree.
I think it'll be more than that, Daniel. We think of people, loan players that are going to go back, guys out of contract. You didn't mention a keeper there, didn't they? Going to sign a goalkeeper. It's a massive. Listen, Rangers have a few rebuilds in the last few seasons, a few big ones, but I think this Celtic one could be the biggest of the lot.
I think it's an Ange Postecoglou style pivot, isn't it? When Postecoglou took on the job, a major reset was required of the squad.
Yeah.
And I think this squad seems to have kind of come to the end of a cycle, and it needs rebooted, and it needs rebooted quickly, and substantially. So, and that's again another reason, as you said, Scotty. If you're left trying to overhaul this whole thing, first thing you do is you sit Callum McGregor down and say, "You with me?"
Yeah.
And you make sure that he's around to help and bring these guys into the club and help them settle and adjust and teach them about the standards that are deemed acceptable and not acceptable at Celtic. That's part and parcel of the importance of having a guy like that around the place.
And the thing is, and it's not to say it will make it more difficult, because there's been examples where, like Ange Postecoglou, when there was a big rebuild and it worked for them. Took them kind of 6 weeks to get going, obviously, but eventually go and win the league. But you look at the other two kind of title rivals. From the outside, at the moment, it looks like Rangers and Hearts will probably be only tweaking in the summer. Maybe a bit more than tweaking, but there'll no be wholesale changes. I mean, I look at that Rangers.
They don't have to rip it up and start again.
Oh, no chance. I mean, you look at the ages of the Rangers players. That's a young squad that probably needs a wee bit more experience, but will just need added to. Obviously, a few loan players will go back, but they might try and get like a Giga or a Mikey Moore back again, and that keeps the continuity going. At the moment, I mean, things might change, and it depends if there's big sales, like maybe a Raskin leaving, for instance, for big money. But it looks at the moment like when Rangers and Hearts get to the summer, I don't think there'll be wholesale changes. I think for the two managers, it'll just be a case of, right, what areas can we improve on? Where can we get better? If a couple go, you maybe bring 3 or 4 in. That's going to be in total contrast to what's happening at Celtic Park.
Yeah, Celtic need it's a blank canvas job for Celtic, whereas Rangers and Hearts, you think, go into the summer just looking to see what they can do to upgrade certain positions in the starting 11. So they've done the heavy lifting to get themselves into this position. Celtic, it needs recalibrated from top to bottom, whether it's in the dressing room at Lennoxtown or in the director's box at Celtic Park. This thing needs a structural overhaul as a matter of some urgency.
You can see on the screen there, AF Scott says Rangers and Hearts seem to have their ducks in order. Can only imagine how much Kavanagh will invest if they win and go straight into the Champions League, which I think is still the case due to Olympiacos. Their UEFA rating has dropped significantly. I do think that Shakhtar Donetsk win the Conference League, it could affect Rangers. But right now, as we sit here, if Rangers win the league, they go straight into the Champions League. I mean, that would be huge for Rangers, massive.
That'd be massive, and it'd totally change how they approach the summer. And that's what we thought in January, didn't we? When Rangers threw a few quid at it, that they maybe looked at it and thought, this is a big opportunity that we maybe didn't expect, and it might be one of the last chances you get, to win a league and go straight into the Champions League. So, I mean, it's no, as you say, there's a few things need to happen first, but if Rangers could win that title and miss the qualifiers to get straight into the group stage, I mean, what an absolute bonus that would be for everyone. The owners, the supporters, Danny Rule. I mean, it would be absolutely massive for them. So, the stakes are really high going into these last 5 games.
I mean, on Rangers, well, we're mentioning them, Scott. They're off to Spain this week. We're talking about next season and planning. And I do think that in tomorrow's paper, you'll be able to read that the planning is already underway for next season.
Yeah, well, they're going away for obviously some warm weather training, Daniel. I'm always a wee bit worried when teams go away, getting towards the end of the season, they'll get a bit too relaxed and then come back and can't get going again. But Danny Rowe clearly feels it's necessary. They've obviously got this kind of 2-week break with the Scottish Cup semis. And we spoke to him about it specifically and what kind of benefits he would get from it. I think there's 2 sides. One is kind of recovery and allowing players to get back from injury. You think of Mikey Moore, who's obviously carrying something at the moment, had to come off again at the weekend. He's a key player for Rangers, but they can't quite get him fit. I think this might be the chance, this 2 weeks, to get him back properly fit so that he's ready for the run-in. But the other thing, as Danny Rowe touched on in the interview, is just he genuinely believes he can go to Spain this week and work on tactical things for the last 5 games, little tweaks, little kind of system changes that they can use in the run-in that will just give them that advantage. We talk about these small margins, small details. He genuinely thinks that it can make a difference to them getting into these last 5 games. Now, only time will tell, obviously, but it's going to be interesting to see them, obviously, when they come back. First game at home to Motherwell, crucial game. Obviously Hearts that same weekend go to Easter Road for the derby, so it could be absolutely vital in terms of the title race. But it'll be interesting just to see how Rangers look, how fresh they look. Will there be wee changes, tactical changes that they've worked on in Spain? So he thinks it'll be beneficial, but as I say, we'll soon find out.
What do you think, Keith? Do you think that will benefit Rangers going off to Spain? You can see there Gordon says it sounds like a recipe for disaster. Rebel says it can't be great coming back to Scotland in the Arctic after that.
Have you looked at? I was going to say, have you looked outside the window? Right. If somebody was to offer me 5 days warm weather training facility, I'd be all over that right now. I think Danny Rowe likes it because he did it with Bayern Munich when he was assistant there with Hansi Flick. I think they went around about similar time in the German domestic season when there was a lot on the line. Bayern Munich went away to a training camp in Portugal, I think, and they came back and they finished off the mission. And Danny Rose seemed to think, or was suggesting that part of that, what a key component there was that little break that they had, the togetherness, being around each other 24 hours a day over a period of time, not just, going training and then going home in the afternoon. It's being around each other. It's trying to forge that sort of togetherness that will be required now for whatever team manages to go over this line. That's going to be a key part of it. And I think I can totally understand the sense in it. And it's different these days. It's not like it was even back in the day when I was going to say when I was a young guy. It's quite a while ago. But football players are athletes. They're professionals. They're not going away for a boozer. There's no way. You look at Danny Rowe, that's not going to happen. It's not about going to Spain and then sneaking out at 2 a.m, or sneaking back into the hotel at 2 or 3 a.m. after going to a nightclub. That's not going. That's not the way that this younger generation of professional athletes behave. So it'll all be about the minor details and the margins that they call them. So if they've got this opportunity, and they do, I don't think they'll be delighted that they've got the opportunity, because I think they'd much rather be playing in a Scottish Cup semi-final. But now that it's there, they might as well take it. And Hearts are away in Spain as well, aren't they? So it makes perfect sense. I think if you can get away, get together, really bond closely with each other, and get ready, because all hell's going to break loose when you get back.
I think they might get a wee night out, Daniel. Just listening to Danny Rowe the other day, I think he's, as Jacko says, they're not going to be I've got
It's not a night out like you and I would call it, Scott.
But they might get out for a couple of glasses of wine or something, Dan. I think that bonding is important. As I say, mentioned it the other day. He does want them getting closer together, spending more time with each other. He clearly feels that's important. And getting back to your original point, it isn't just about this season. Obviously, that's the main focus. But I think I'm right in saying the training camp they're going to is no far from one of Andrew Kavanagh's properties in Spain, and I think Danny Rowe does plan to sit down. No, whether it's with just Andrew Kavanagh or other members of the board or the ownership. He did say that that's another benefit. I think this week will give him the chance to properly sit down and put some plans in place for the summer and for next season. So you've got to think that'll be beneficial as well.
Well, one or two things that I've heard from behind the scenes, Scott, suggest very strongly that Andrew Kavanagh is real hands-on in terms of the business that's going to get done this summer in the transfer market. Some might think that's a good thing, some might think it's a bad thing, because he doesn't have a lot of football, but he's speaking to all the right people. And I think that he is being pretty meticulous, very hands-on about making sure that the right players have been identified for the right positions, and then he'll play a major part in driving the negotiation side of the deals, and obviously the financial side of it as well. So I think that bodes quite well for Rangers. I think they should be absolutely thrilled that that this regime change went through when it did this time last year, and that they've got these guys that are running the club in a far more professional manner than it was previously.
I agree, Jack. I don't think, as you say, Andrew Kavanagh's not going to go and pick players, right, or tell Danny Rowe who's better in this position.
This boy, yeah.
Because that would just be daft. But it's just a wee example, and I might be miles off it here, but you think of Rangers recruitment in the summer in the left back area. They were criticised at the time, if you remember, for only having one left back, and that was Jaden Magoma, a 20-year-old on loan for Brentford, who I think it's fair to say still lacks a wee bit of physicality. He's only 20, still a developing young player. I think I'm right in saying, when Andrew Kavanagh then spoke to people within the club, and as Jacko says, became a bit more hands-on, and they talked about profiles of players and what was required in Scottish football, what was required to be a Rangers player, a successful Rangers player. I then think it's no coincidence that they go and get Tour Romans in January, who to me is a completely different profile in Magoma, a different physical specimen, and Rangers are seeing the benefits of that. I know he's injured at the moment, but Romans looks like being a terrific signing for them. I think it's wee things like that. Andrew Kavanagh's willing to speak to the right people, willing to listen, take advice on board, understand it, and then actually put it into practice when it comes to getting guys in. And I think that can only be a good thing for them.
Let me throw a few more comments at you guys because we've got plenty coming in. Rab wants us to stop talking rubbish. He says, how are Rangers and Hearts brilliant exactly? There's only 3 points in the top 3. Stop talking rubbish. Okay, sorry about that, Rab.
Did we say they were brilliant?
I know, I don't recall that, but
no.
George wants Celtic to sign Braga. In the summer, he says Braga's a very humble young man. Watched his mate do a vlog on him. If Celtic can't win the league, last game of the season, we play the Lisbon Lions that are still with us and Susan Boyle to help Hearts win. That's a good idea. That's worth considering.
By the way, it's a good point. It's a good point, and the Hearts fans, McInnes, won't want to hear me saying it, but Celtic would be off their head if they're not picking up the phone to try and at least have a discussion with Tony Bloom about what it might take to get Braga out of there.
He's a terrific player,
absolutely, all day long. I think the majority of Hearts fans realise Braga is likely to be, it'd be brilliant for Hearts if they could talk him into another year. But the whole Jamestown model points to he's reaching. He'll reach a big number in the market, and I think it's very likely that he could move on this summer. Now the question is, we know what the English Premier League attitude is to guys in the Scottish League. It's not great. They look down their noses at it a little bit. Tony Bloom won't, obviously. Tony Bloom, I wonder if he might see a pathway into Brighton, but it's unlikely. So you're probably looking at a Championship level club for Braga, which seems silly given the size of the contribution he's made this season. But if I was a club with a bigger budget in this country, within these borders, why would I not be asking the question? Just keep me informed. If you're going to sell him, let us know. I'll see what I can do to better whatever offer you get from a championship club.
How much
Now,
do you
fair
think?
play. I think Hearts would be well within the rights to expect upwards of £5 million from him. And I don't think that's an unreasonable number. Look, things can get silly. You can get into a Dutch auction if you've got all of a sudden 3 or 4 English Premier League clubs decide to show an interest. But I just think that's unlikely given the way that they kind of look down their noses at our game. And Celtic should be able to compete financially with anybody in the Championship if it comes down to putting a deal on the table that's attractive to Hearts.
I mean, Mizuno in the comments, Scott says 7 million. I think it's perfectly reasonable given this season.
I think I tend to agree with Jacko. Just before he said that, 5 was probably the figure that I was thinking. When you think where Hearts plucked him for and how much they got him for, I mean, what a deal that would be to get £5 million in after one season. And I keep going back to it. I know Hearts fans don't want to hear it, but I think it was at a fans forum where Tony Bloom said to the supporters, look, don't get too attached to these players because they'll not be here that long. I mean, Braga to me falls into that category. I mean, he's an absolute hero there already.
Don't get too attached. Just make up a song to him.
Exactly. Whole season.
And sing it constantly for the whole season.
Actually, that's good. So they'll be absolutely devastated if he goes, but you can't have it both ways. You can't want Jamestown and Tony Bloom on board.
Yeah.
When their model is exactly that, you need to accept that that's the deal, and you need to be content in your own mind that as a supporter that it's fine. All right, Braga is a hero, we love him, but if he goes, no, don't worry, there'll be another one coming in. There'll be another one along the line. Now, listen, it might not pan out like that because clearly you don't get every signing right. He's one that's totally worked for them. I agree with Jacko. If Celtic and Rangers are not looking at him and are seriously interested in him, they must be off their heads because he'd be perfect for. We've talked about it on here. He's perfect for Scottish football, Braga, because his attitude and his work rate and his desire and his hunger and appetite. I think that comes from where he's come from. I think you can one of these guys that appreciates where he is and everything that he's got. So I'd be amazed if the old firm I'm asking about him. But if you're a Hearts fan, you're gutted, but you just need to accept. Probably same with Kizaridis. I know he's been a bit off the boil in recent weeks, but he'll be another one that teams are looking at come the summer.
The other thing is though, because before we're accused here of selling off this Hearts side that might win the title, there is another way of looking at it, and that is Jamestown, the analytics, the data. Tony Bloom himself, Derek McInnes, where are they? Where are they in the conversation? Because there might be a strong argument to say, do you know what? Yeah, if we sell him this summer, we could get 5, 6, 7 million. I'm telling you now, you keep him 12 more months, you might sell him for double that. And I know there's a bit of a gamble in that, because what happens if he gets injured now? But if he repeats what he's done and he continues to grow and progress in the manner in which he has over this season at Hearts, what sort of a player and what sort of a value have you got 12 months down the line? And that might be a decision that has to, and a discussion that has to take place. But, the indicators are, and as you said, Scotty, that what Tony Bloom's already sort of warned the fans, does make you think if they get a really good offer, they'll find it hard to turn it down. They will then have confidence in their own system to go and scout the next guy, the one that can come in and do a similar job. But yeah, there might also have to be factored into that discussion. Yeah, he's good, really good now. How good might he be next summer? Do we keep him for 2?
Especially if he does
and
it.
Given everything the Hearts are trying to build, that would make sense as well.
Yeah. Especially if he does it in the Champions League, which I'm only saying half tongue in cheek. You never know.
Yeah.
Who knows? Let me finish those comments. Sing the Blues says, if people are saying 27 million for Engels, Braga should be 30 million. This one from McKenna says, difference in the title race, goals. Rangers are scoring plenty. Shank's back with 5 in 2 games. John says, why don't Rangers just take a break up Loch Lomond? Sounds like an idea. Sing the Blue says the Rangers team should be tackling the Ghislaine Sands. Players are spoiled these days. And Marzuno says,
Scotty was going to do that the other day.
Aye. Wasn't there enough defibrillators for that?
Marzuno says, get Susan Boyle in as a special appearance and goal on the final day if necessary. That would be a fitting end to the current season if that happened. The last thing that I maybe want to touch on, guys, did you see, we had it on Record Sport online today, Nico Raskin talking about his time with Russell Martin. Look, and I know we talked about Russell Martin recently when he was in 5 Live, and we talked about him a lot this season, obviously. But just kind of hammers home again, Scott, the damage that he almost did. You said last night, Keith, that for you, Raskin, on the type of form he was on Sunday, is the best player in Scotland. I mean, can you imagine if Russell Martin had sold him?
Certainly the best midfield player.
Aye.
But this doesn't surprise me. And I'm sure that we talked about it on the show at the time.
Aye, we did, aye.
The way that Nico Raskin was being mistreated and mismanaged by Russell Martin was astonishing. And I said it from game one, the big, when the wrappers come off Russell Martin's Rangers side. I think, what was it, Scotty? Anderlecht at Ibrox or something like that, right back at the start of the season. And I was very curious because obviously this was going to be a brand new kind of contemporary style of play. And I'm sitting watching it, and for the life of me, I can't work out what he's doing. Nico Raskin is dropping back, basically playing as a left back stroke outside left, and Max Aarons is moving in as the inverted, so a right back playing as a left back, then moving into the centre of the field, pushing Raskin out to the sidelines, and he was given the responsibility of doing all the good work that Raskin does in his best areas of the pitch. And I thought from that first glance, at Russell Martin's Rangers, I knew that he was going to have a major problem with Nico Raskin, because there was no way that Raskin would be able to keep his mouth shut about that, and rightly so. What a waste it was, and it must have been so frustrating for him to look at Max Aarons. Max Aarons has, he's whatever he is, he's certainly not a centre midfield player. He's certainly not a distributor, a passer of the ball. And Raskin, I just felt from day one there was going to be a problem. And then it wasn't, I think it was after that Russell Martin went to Motherwell and started throwing things about players need to watch their egos. And I said on the show at that time, he's talking about Nico Raskin. I said that to you, Dan, on this show.
Yep.
It was obvious to me that there was a real clash of personalities right from the start. And I don't think that Russell Martin could handle the character that Nico Raskin is. He's a fiery wee guy. And I think he's probably got a voice. And I don't think that Russell Martin wanted any voices other than his own inside that dressing room. And that's why it seemed very obvious from the outside that there was going to be a major issue between the two. And it got further, it deteriorated. And I'm entirely positive that if Russell Martin could have got his way on that one, and Nico Raskin didn't stand up for himself and fight to stay at Rangers, which he sort of did, although it was up in the air right till the end of that the transfer window. But if Russell Martin had got his way, I think Nico Raskin would have been dispatched at the speed of light. I think he couldn't wait to get shot of him. And that tells you something about Russell Martin as a manager, and more importantly, as a man manager.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. I mean, I'm sure Barry Ferguson is quoted since he left the interim manager's gig at Rangers as saying Nico Raskin was quite challenging as a player, to deal with. But so as a manager, you can go two ways with that. Barry's attitude was he loved that, he thrived on that, he took on that challenge. And if you speak to Barry,
I think it frustrated him a little bit now and again.
Right, but he was willing to come and go with him. I think he'll tell you that Raskin did give pops back at him, but Barry obviously, as you'd expect, gave as good as he got and made sure obviously Raskin knew who was in charge.
I think he gave a wee bit better,
So I think that's the way. That has to be the way you deal with a player like Raskin to get the best out of him. And I think you could argue in that wee spell at the end of last season, Barry Ferguson probably did get the best out of him. You into the goal at Celtic Park and giving him that licence, a bit like we've seen on Sunday with Danny Rowe in the second half, taking the shackles off him and allowing him to go and influence and affect the game. I think that's when you get the best out of him. Russell Martin, obviously, he clearly thought it was the right thing to do at the time. I don't think he would. I'd be amazed if he stuck to that now with hindsight. But
yes, he would, Scott. Yes, he would.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that Russell Martin has said is that I wish I had stuck more to my original plan. And his original plan involved people doing exactly as they were told, playing the game his way. Playing the game his way. And even though it was to the detriment of the team and to the detriment of Nico Raskin that Russell Martin wanted him to play in wide areas of the pitch and out of the areas where he excels. It was madness, and it was I don't know. There's almost a touch of the narcissistic about it. That you'll do it my way, and this is the way, and any insubordination will result in you getting papped out.
At Motherwell, that
madness.
You're talking about positioning. I remember being at Firth Park in the opening day of the season, and he was playing as a number 8, but very high up in the left-hand side. I remember sitting with Andy in the press box thinking Raskin was receiving the ball in the final third with his back to goal, almost like a forward, and he kept losing it. I mean, he lost it 2 or 3 times. I remember in the first half. And I think that's never Nico Raskin's game. Receiving the ball with his back to goal and trying to beat people, and that was never going to be his game. I mean, listen, you can argue whether he's a number 6 kind of sitting midfielder in terms of the role he does for Belgium, or is he actually at his best for Rangers? And I think he probably is, as a touchstone on Sunday, where he bombs on, goes and affects the game. But one thing you can't argue, he's never a high, wide attacking player that's going to, as I say, is going to receive the ball with his back to goal. So it was very strange. And as you say, Daniel, I mean, we can almost laugh about it now in terms of Russell Martin, when it went wrong, and how stupid was that, trying to bomb him out and try to sell him and stuff. But at that time, Raskin's value was decreasing by the minute because of what was happening. Yep. And they could have let him go for no a lot of money in that window.
And he was painted as a bad character, Scott, as well. Exactly. He was painted as a bad apple. Yep. So not only are you saying he's not good enough to get into my team that can't win games of football, he's not good enough to get into that team. So you've devalued him in the first place. But on top of that, I don't want him in the dressing room because he's a bad influence. I mean, what a way to wipe the value out of the guy.
That's what I was going to say. So if you're in charge of the club now, you must be thinking, God, can you imagine we had to let him go at that point for the money that was maybe on offer, compared to now, where he's obviously one of the main men again. They're trying to go for a title. He's heading to the World Cup with Belgium. He's still got, I think it's another 2 years left in his contract. If he keeps going and keeps this form up, obviously, if bids are going to come in, Rangers could get a right decent offer for him. So I think you're right, Daniel. It's kind of scary to think what might have happened if Russell Martin had got his way and they had sold him in that window with his value decreasing all the time.
Aye. It's funny, Russell Martin feels like a lifetime ago. It doesn't feel like this season. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Even thinking back to Brendan Rodgers and the Honda Civic, that all feels as if it was about 4 seasons ago now, doesn't it?
Bizarre, I know.
Even been at Falkirk on Sunday, obviously we were there the last time Rangers went there, and it was like Russell Martin getting out the side exit. The Rangers team bus couldn't get out of the car park because of fans protesting. Scrambled a one each against Falkirk. At that point, you were wondering, the Rangers going to get into the top 6 at this rate. Compare that to Sunday. 6 goals, fans delirious. Danny Rowe, the hero, and 5 games to go. They've actually got a decent chance to win the title. It's been absolutely bonkers.
Aye, and long may it continue. But for tonight, I think that brings us to the end of Tuesday Night's Hotline Live, brought to you by NordVPN. I should say, guys, we've had plenty of people in the comments asking us to talk about the semi-finals, but don't worry, guys. Got 2 other shows this week. We'll get to it all in good time. But for tonight, Keith, Scott, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers,
See you
Dan.
tomorrow, Dan.
We'll be back at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Hope you can join us then. Thanks for watching.